something of great value today. So without any further ado, I will hand it over to LaWanda Knox. LaWanda, the floor and the video is yours.
Thank you so much. Yes. So hello, everyone. Yes, I'm LaWanda Knox. I'm a PhD candidate at the Hebrew Academy International under Dr. Howard's leadership. The PhD program, it has meant a lot to me because without it, I would not have been able to do this kind of research that is so meaningful to me. So today we're going to explore something that's been on my heart, how we can use genetic evidence to validate what our community already knows about our ancient heritage. This isn't about proving anything to outsiders. This is about having the tools to document the truth for ourselves. And so I'm going to start with my personal journey because many of you have maybe walked similar paths as I have. Before COVID, I was in, deep in corporate America, just going through the motions. But during the pandemic, the Most High began to wake me up spiritually. Around that same time, my father got his DNA results back and everything changed from there. His test results showed Mbundu of Angola and some STR markers that I didn't know anything about. I also had my uncle on my mother's side take the same African ancestry test, and the results was Balanta of Guinea-Bissau. And then I took the test as well, and it was Mandinka from Senegal. So, I wanted to, take a deeper dive into what all this meant. And I entered those markers into the markers that were on the test for the Patrick clan test. I entered those markers into a haplogroup predictor and discovered that my father's primary haplogroup was E1B1A V38 with the subclade of L485. A lineage I heard that E1B1A connects us to the ancient Hebrew Israelites, but I didn't understand how. So then my husband's results qualified, fast forward, our husband's results qualified our family for Sierra Leone citizenship. And so that's when I knew that this wasn't just about ancestry, it was about restoration.
Okay. Can I interject really quick just for a question? So when you said you entered in, was that like a third party type of tool, or was that something that you had as a result of some of the other work that you have been doing, or when did you enter in your information?
Yeah, so I Googled haplogroup predictor tools, and then there was a free one online. It was a haplogroup predictor tool online that allowed me to put in for every allele marker. I was able to put the number that went with that. And then it populated, then I hit calculate and it came up with the most likely haplogroup of those markers.
Okay. So just a note, right? I just wanted to share that with the family out there. So, we take these commercial DNA tests, whether it be, African ancestry or ancestry DNA, but that isn't the end of the story, or doesn't have to be. There are things that you can do with that information that can eventually give you additional information if you're not satisfied with everything that test reveals. So just wanted to bring that to the attention of the audience.
No, thank you. Yeah, it's not the end of the story, because actually I didn't even think to even look up the haplogroup predictor until like maybe a year after the test results came in. I was just excited to know, a tribe and a country.
Right.
I was good with that. And then it's like, yeah, like I say, like a year later, then I was like, went back and I was like, what do these numbers mean on this page? And then that's when I took a deeper dive, and then everything started to come together, which is what I'm going to go over.
Nice.
And so like, like Kevin said, many of you have taken the DNA tests from Ancestry, 23andMe, African Ancestry. I chose, I did Ancestry and African Ancestry, but I really like African Ancestry because, it has they use the largest African database. And so with African Ancestry, the results, will give you back something like belong to Guinea-Bissau 100%. And then, you feel good that you're connected to Guinea-Bissau, but then what? It's like, where did the Belanta come from? Or, before they were even in Guinea-Bissau, and how did our ancestors get there? So I just had a lot of questions and not a lot of answers. So I feel like the commercial tests give you a snapshot, but they don't give you the full picture. And so today I want to show you how we can start writing that story using, if we can start writing out that story by using the same genetic tools that validate our community about where we come from. So we can use those tools to complete the picture. So, and then I'll share with you what I did. I'm going to share, that's what I'm going to do the deep dive into. Because I'm not a geneticist. I'm not even a historian. I've just read what those scientists and historians have published in peer-reviewed articles. And this is like my interpretation of what they found.
Okay. Can we back up real quick? I know you are a PhD candidate. What are you studying, and what are you getting your PhD? Does it relate at all to any of this work?
That's a good question. So I'm a PhD candidate at the Hebrew Academy International, which is an online program, and my dissertation is about testing or using the test. I don't do the test, but using the test that African-American males have taken from African ancestry, and then seeing if I can connect it back through the research as far as I can go, which in this case is like back to the Nile Valley. So I used the test results, plugged it in, see if they were E1B1A or not, and then did research to find out what was the migration path of E1B1A V38. And so that is my dissertation research, what I focused on.
Got it.
Yep. So you'll hear me reference the studies by author's last name throughout this presentations, like Semino or Patton or Trombetta. And basically I'm just referencing my sources. And then I'm also trying to like demystify some of these terms that you see in genetic population studies. When we talk about genetics in this context, we're focusing on like the Y chromosome for the males. And why am I focusing on that? Because this also is going to connect to the Hebrew I can't even say the word right now, patriarchal lineage passed directly from father to son. So in my study, I'm focusing on the father, to son lineage, and not the maternal lineage. Mostly because on the African ancestry test results, they don't give you the haplogroup numbers for the female test, only on the male test. So it's different. They give you different data. So I wouldn't be able to I wouldn't have the data to plug it in for the matriclan side or the maternal side, only the paternal side.
Okay. So question is that a feature that African ancestry has always had, or is that something that they recently added, or is it as far as is it the haplogroup, that's something they've always given?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they've always given it. I mean, everyone who's participated in the study, all the males that participated in the study, the haplogroup markers have been in the letter.
Okay.
So I have not come across anyone who does not have their haplogroup numbers in their letter.
Yeah, I asked because I don't recall seeing it in mine. I got to check. So
because men can take both. Right? Because the men can take the maternal and the paternal. So some men took the maternal and not the paternal. So if you only took the maternal matriclan test, you wouldn't have these numbers.
Yeah, so I've taken both. So okay.
Okay, yeah. So look at your letter. Yeah. It's not the certificate, it's in the letter.
It's in the letter, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And then so your haplogroup is like your ancient family name. It tells you which major branch of the human family tree you belong to. So for us, for my study, the focus was on E1B1A, also called EV38, which is a significant branch with deep roots in Africa. And then from there, you have a subclade, which is a more specific family branch within that haplogroup, which I'll break down further. And then, so it's like, think of it's refining your family name from Johnson to Johnson from Georgia. So like the haplogroup would be the Johnson part, but the Johnson from Georgia would be the haplogroup plus that extra like subclad. So it points to a more recent common ancestor. Go ahead.
No, I got you. I'm trying.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then so basically the STR markers that I'm talking about, are your genetic fingerprint. These are the specific numbers that identify your lineage, like, you know, your precise address and number. They're what companies like African Ancestry use to match your specific tribes. Yep. So when the Patrick Clan results came back, they're using the STR markers to connect you to a specific African tribe, but it's really showing you the very, you know, end of a long journey. Well, yeah, it is. It's showing you the end of a long journey because it's telling you where you can find your common ancestors now.
Right. Okay.
Right.
So yeah, that's important because
okay.
I mean, a lot of people, you know, we get the results back. Like mine will say you are 100% or 100% match to the belong thing. A lot of people will interpret that to mean, oh, I'm 100% of this specific ethnic group, right? And you know, we know we're not 100% of anything, right?
Nope.
No one is, right? You're a combination of people from various places. So, because I hear people all the time, they're like, "Wow, I was surprised. I'm 100% Balanta or Fula," and I'm like, "Well, that's not exactly, you know, what that is saying to you, but yeah." So you clarified that, right? That 100% or 98% means you match up a specific marker to that degree. Is that correct?
Yeah, to that lineage. So the key is understanding that your Y DNA, your father's line, provides a very narrow, like that's just one line. There's thousands of lines for one person, thousands of lines, and this is just one of them.
One of them. Right.
Fathers to you. So it provides a very narrow but deep view into your ancestry, but it doesn't tell the whole story of your entire genetic makeup, but it tells a powerful one for the patrilineal heritage, which usually carries from, you know, father to father.
Okay.
Let's see here. So the E1B1A V38 is a Y chromosome haplogroup, which basically means that it passes, like I said, from father to son, unchanged for thousands of years. So think of it as your patriarchal genetic signature. It's like a GPS coordinate that's been traveling through your bloodline since ancient times, unchanged. But now here's what the research shows us, and I want you to really hear this part. Like Trombetta hypothesized that the E1B1A V38 lineages originated in East Africa. So a lot of times you get the test results back in their West African countries. But what the research shows that those lineages migrated to West Africa from East Africa. So, you know, other researchers found that descendants migrated across the Sahara, and I'm specifically talking about E1B1A because there's different migration patterns across the Sahara from east to west around 19,000 years ago.
Okay.
And so
that's another important point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a significant, because there's been this significant gap between, you know, our West Africa, linking us to our West African heritage and then to East Africa. And
right, because
so
you'll see, you know, certain people, excuse me for chiming in, but you'll see certain people who will often, right, in an effort to disconnect us from everything that happened in East Africa, the Nile River Valley civilizations, Kemet. They will say, we're only of West and Central African descent. And I'll say, well, our most recent, right, migration came from West and Central Africa, but there were, many people who migrated intercontinental and transcontinental for thousands of years. And this is how we were able to kind of trace that and verify that and show proof of those migrations. So yeah, very important point.
Yeah, no, you got it. Absolutely. Yeah, so it's even this goes back even before the latest Bantu expansion from Central and West Africa, because a lot of times they're like, oh, the Bantu expansion, between the Niger Congo. Well, that's actually more like 5,000 years ago. So that Bantu expansion that they're talking about was more recently than this. So both can be true.
Okay.
It's just the timeline of events.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, so I'm going to break it down, the E1B1A family tree a little bit more. So, so that we can have a better understanding of where you may fit in this family. So think of E1B1A as a big family. This major lineage then splits into two different branches: E1B1A, which is mostly our branch, primarily found across Africa, and then there's E1B1B, that's more common in North Africa and parts of Europe. But the story gets even more specific within E1B1A. It further divides into EM2, which is also can be called E1B1A1, and EM329, which is sometimes called E1B1A2. So let me show you what I mean by that, because I'm a visual person. We're visual people. So most African Americans carry the E-M2, which you see in the green line, or E1B1A1 branch. But this is the lineage that split from E1B1A, which you see coming out of East Africa from that main E, into the Sahara and spread across West and Central Africa. And it's that spread, that later, more recent spread, is what is known as the Bantu expansion.
Okay.
So what Semino's research shows is that the parent lineage, and I don't see it, E-P2, I don't see it on the map here, E-P2. Or E1B1. So E1B1 is observed mainly in Ethiopians.
Okay.
And EM329 or E1B1A2 is geographically restricted to Ethiopia. So this suggests that E1B1A as a whole originated in East Africa before expanding, west and east.
Okay.
Like the origin began in East Africa before expanding. So when we talk about E1B1A V38, we're talking about this deep ancient root that includes these branches. But for many of us, E-M2 is our direct traceable path that connects us to this larger story. E-M2, right? Which is why your test results will say this is where you started, but that's not, or excuse me, that your test results will say this is where you're connected to.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
So our test results will say, I think, this is your earliest ancestor going back. I think it says 5,000 years is what.
Yeah, up to 2 to 5,000 years.
Yeah, 2 to 5,000 years. But what you're showing here is that we had an origin point that predated that, what they're able to determine and verify from those specific results.
Yes, exactly. And right. So, okay, so you got it. So thank you for capturing that. And then, so what exactly was I trying to discover in my research or my dissertation? This was my core research question was, how does E1B1A V38 haplogroup patterns in African American men reveal migration paths connecting East African origins through the Nile Valley to West Africa and the Americas? So East, Nile Valley, West America. And so I know that sounds like a mouthful, so let me break that down into simpler terms.
Okay.
So first, can we really trace the journey of our male lineages, of our male family lineages, step by step across continents and time? Second, can we connect the dots from ancient origins deep in East Africa all the way to where many of us are today in the Americas? And then most importantly, can we do this using systematic scientific evidence, not just oral traditions, but like verifiable genetic markers? Can we use genetic markers to do this? And let's see here. So here's a question for when you're watching this, you could put in the chat, what would it mean to you to know your ancestral journey? Put that answer in the chat. What would it mean to you to know your ancestral journey? So, because that was the question that I had when I saw the results and didn't know. I had a hunch that we connected all the way back to the Nile Valley and to Kemet. Like I was reading books, especially during COVID, I was reading books like by what's the one, Wake Up Black America, by gosh, I can't remember the author's name. I have to come back to it. But
Chancellor Williams.
Not Chancellor Williams, but he's another good one. And yeah, there's all the, I mean, the DNA results were the receipts of those authors that were telling us that we have this connection to the Nile Valley, but the DNA, the DNA test that we're taking right now, because this is new, these commercial tests is new to us. Now we have the receipts.
Absolutely.
So now we can we can pull it all together. So in my research, I said, let me test this out. So I gathered 12 African-American men who all took the same Patrick Clan African ancestry test and had their results already. And then I, plugged in their markers into the haplogroup predictor. And then 10 out of 12 of these men, and they were from all over the country, were E1B1A V38. So like 83% of my sample, I mean, 12 is not a whole lot, but it's, we're still adding more. And they're mostly still E1B1A V38.
Now,
go ahead.
So were they representing, different ethnic groups? Well, so the African ancestry results showed that they were any of them the same, like ethnic group no, they were different. Okay. Yeah, some were from Guinea-Bissau, some was from
Sierra Leone, there was Nigeria, there was Togo and Benin. I mean, the whole West, and then some were like even went further back. The two that were not a match. Okay, so the two that were not a match were, one was a different, it wasn't E1B1A. I can't think of the marker at the top of my head, but it was a different mark. It was a different haplogroup, but still African.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was E2. It was E2. That's what it was. And then the other person was Portugal.
Huh.
Did not have an African ancestor.
Did not have an African, right? Okay. That's significant. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, because as you just because there's I'm going to get into that. So the Patrick clan results connected them, the 10, to specific African tribes. One male was connected to the Balanta people in Guinea-Bissau, another to the Yoruba in Nigeria, another to Mbundu in Angola, all carrying the same ancient lineage family, but scattered across different parts of Africa through migrations across the Sahara. So this tells us something powerful. We didn't just randomly end up in different African tribes. There was a pattern, a journey, a purpose, a movement of our people across the continent.
Right. And then for then all of those men who share that to be in the United States of America, that's another important, I think, factor. Yeah.
That we have the genetic thread.
Right.
And so because it didn't have to be like that. Like 65% of African American men, only 65% of African American men have a African paternal lineage result.
Right.
35% have a non-African paternal lineage result, like Europe.
Right. Wow.
Right. So and we know why that is, mostly because if the paternal lineage is following the male, and during the disruption of enslavement of African women, if the white European males were, I didn't mean to get this graphic, but I don't mean to re-traumatize the community.
Yeah, no, we got it. Yeah.
But if they were raping the women, then the children would carry then the European paternal lineage.
Right.
But the maternal lineage would still be African.
Right.
So that's why it's a much higher percentage of African ancestry in African American women than there are in African American men. All right. So the thing that blew, okay, this one right here. This is where it got real. This was the peak that in 2012, a researcher, Hawass, and his team did genetic analysis on Pharaoh Ramses III, trying to figure out who killed this powerful ruler of ancient Egypt. That's what they was trying to figure out. But I read the study, and they determined through the DNA testing that he carried E1B1A haplotype. So just to be clear about what this means, that we weren't, a lot of times, the historians like to paint us as slaves in Egypt, or that we weren't even Egyptian at all, like that we, have no connection.
Had no connection, right, whatsoever.
Right.
Yeah.
But Ramses III was one of us.
Right.
He carried the same genetic lineage that many African American men carry to this day.
Right. And if you've done 23andMe and you happen to be one of those or one of us that has that, it'll connect you, and it will even say it, right? Because I have it, and it says it on mine, right? You are directly connected to Ramesses III, right? And I mentioned that, just not fully even understanding what you explained here today to people, and they would dismiss it and say, oh, they just telling y'all what y'all want to hear or whatever, or that's not true. But this is according to your research and per this researcher's verification that is in fact accurate. So
well, yeah. So because my uncle took the test for me, he took the test, but I wanted to know what my mother's paternal lineage was, and that's how I figured out the Balanta of Guinea-Bissau. And he also did 23andMe, so I saw the same thing you're talking about. But it didn't reference where they got that from. So I had to go and dig it up through I had to go look up the peer-reviewed article to find where they got that source from. And that's how I found Hawass, the study.
Got it.
And so 10 out of the 12 of my study participants shared that same lineage type with this ancient king. And so that same genetic signature that runs through the men that took, was part of my study runs through royalty who ruled Egypt over 3,000 years ago. which, you know, would be even earlier than the Bantu expansion.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't all leave.
Right.
Either. So another question for the chat. What does it mean that an ancient Egyptian pharaoh carried the same lineage type as many of us? What does that mean? What does that mean to you? So drop your response in the chat. Now, so based on all this research, here's the possible pathways that emerges. East Africa, starting in East Africa through the migration across the Sahara, then to West and Central Africa, and then Americas through the slave trade. So my research documented that 10 out of 12 of the participants carrying this E1B1A V38 variant, their Patrick plan results connect them to specific African tribes where their ancestors settled, and the research literature suggests these lineages may have ancient East African origins going back at least 19,000 years ago, when it split from a major branch and migrated, in different directions.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the, like kind of like the summary of that. But then I go even further, and then, well, I shouldn't say further. I make it more relevant. So where I talk about the slave trade. So this is the part where I talk about the slave trade reality. When we look at where our ancestors were actually taken from, the research by Patton gives us a very clear picture. So as you can see from this chart, 50% of the individuals, these are percentages in this pie. So 50% of the individuals in this that were E1B1A lineage were taken from the by the Benin region. And then which includes like modern day Nigeria, Benin, and Togo. And then another 30% came from West and Central Africa, which includes Angola, Gabon, yes, and then 13% from Senegambia. So Guinea-Bissau is one of those West African destinations. So, and then go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if you might touch on this a little later, but so from that, does this tell us exactly how we ended up, what were the direct routes and time periods, or were you able to determine any of that our ancestors came from these specific regions, right? Because
two things that I found that was really interesting. One was there was a study, there was a genetic study on all of the slave ports in Africa, West Africa, West Central Africa. They did DNA testing of the Africans that lived near the slave ports, compared it to African American DNA, and they were the same. Like it was the same African footprints that are near the slave ports of Africans today match African American DNA that you find, the samples that you find in America today. So that was one way, but that's more broad, it's not very specific.
Yeah.
The closest I got to more of a specific trade routes and such would be like, there's I hope I don't mess this up, the African trade, we have to Google it real quick. It's called the African trade
voyages. Is that the
it's online. You could Google it. It's like the African trade routes from Africa to the Americas, and there's like a database.
A searchable database. Yes, a searchable database. Like slave voyages, I believe, is slavevoyages.com.
I love you right now.
Yeah. No, you can search it, and you could, it does give pretty specific information about all of those different voyages, from the ports that they left off of to where the ports that they embarked on in the Americas. So yeah, it kind of validates, because you have people online saying that there was no slave trade and things of that nature. But we do have records that verified it, that there were actual slave ships, and they did depart from ports
That's
in
right.
Africa and arrive at various ports in the Americas. So yeah.
So I'm leaving out a really big piece. That subclass that I was talking about, I gotta talk about that next. This is what I was, yeah. So the vast majority of enslaved Africans, were taken from Central and South America. I'm sorry, were taken to Central and South America and the Caribbean. Right? Because we mostly focus on North America, but most of the Africans were, I know you know this, but most of the Africans were taken to Central and South America and the Caribbean. Only a fraction came direct to now North America. And so the reason why that's important is because when you were talking about that we do have the receipts of the slave voyages and such, the clad, when it says Belanta, or not even Belanta, when you type in the haplogroup, the markers, and you get the predictor, it'll also say, and this is so important, what the subclad is, because you can be Belanta and be L485, or you can be in Guinea-Bissau subclads. You can be an African American who took the same test and it says Belanta, Guinea-Bissau. It could be like 5 of you, but your subclass could be different. You could have subclass and still be Belanta of Guinea-Bissau, which means that with that information, you could narrow it down even more of what, let me see here, what your migration pattern was. I mean, the Belanta tribe is nice to know, but the subclass is what really helps you figure out that migration path.
Okay. All right. So question, because Belanta further, break down into different, I don't know if subclass, I think it's subclass, but I'm trying to think of the right word, but further breaks down, right? Because you have Belanta Kintohe, Belanta Nakra, different branches of Belanta people. So does the subclad point directly to that, or?
No, I don't think so. I feel like what I didn't see, what I wanted to see, but I didn't see was, in my research, I could not find that kind of a connection where it's like all L485, for example, if you were subclass L48, which is a popular one, you could be L from Angola, a different type.
Okay.
So there's no tracing of there's no so what's the difference between, it wasn't clear from the research, what's the difference between an L485 that went to Angola versus an L485 that went to the Belanta? What is that connection? All you know what I'm saying? There's still gaps. There's gaps in the research. There's still things that we don't know.
Okay.
There's a lot of things that we still don't know. And there's gaps in the research because Belanta of Guinea-Bissau doesn't really connect, like you said, that doesn't tell you the breakdown.
So let me ask you this. So on my maternal lineage, I have different ethnicities that show up, right? So it says I'm Fula, Mandinka, Belanta, Mande on my maternal lineage, right? Wow. So how does that correlate to what information? How can you be my mother's mother was one thing, right? She wasn't all these different things, right?
Okay.
So how does, why do I then have, right, 5 different ethnic groups saying this is possibly what your,
Your test
eighth
results,
grandmother
that's what
was.
it said? Is this for your maternal or the paternal side?
That's for my maternal. Right.
Maternal.
My maternal. Yeah.
Okay, because that was
hold on, give me 1 second. I'm gonna tell you because everything on here, right? About to pull it up.
I have seen that where they like multiple, but gave you and I believe how did they call it, variants? I think on the maternal test in the letter it talks about the variants.
Right.
But I didn't study that. I didn't study the maternal lineage.
Okay.
So I can't really explain that part. I want to expand into the maternal side.
Okay. So yeah, it says, you share maternal genetic ancestry with Fula, Balanta living in Guinea-Bissau, Mande living in Sierra Leone, and Mandinka people living in Senegal. So that's my maternal lineage, my direct maternal lineage. And I also did multiple tests on my maternal side. So I had a cousin. It's basically I don't want to go all the way, but it's basically my grandfather's maternal lineage, right?
Yeah.
His maternal lineage is Hausa and Yoruba, right? So it's two. Once again, two different. I'm like, I always confuse. Yeah, I'm on the maternal side. My grandfather.
To see if the numbers, like those numbers means, because you have numbers, you have variants on yours, right?
Yep.
So one of the things that I would do is go to Wikipedia and then search what does it tell variants? Are you L2 or L1 or L3? It tells you your haplogroup. I think on your letter it should say like L2, one, or it's going to tell you that you can search that and it'll break it down for you.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna have to do that. So yeah, but again, it only does that for your paternal lineage, correct?
No. Okay,
so let me. For your maternal. Okay,
I'm glad you said that. You said that. So okay, so the paternal letter only gives you your markers. So I had to use that third party, that software that I looked up to do the haplogroup predictor to tell me the haplogroup and the subclad so that I could research it. But the maternal letter does tell you you're in the letter. They actually give you your haplogroup. They don't give you the subclad, but they give you the haplogroup. I think 23andMe does go anyway. The African ancestry maternal test does give you your haplogroup, and you can use that to further research more about your lineage on your maternal side. So really I'm not going to say that the tribes and the country don't matter. My thinking is that the reason why there's so many is because we're more connected than we thought.
Right.
Because you probably only got one haplogroup on that letter that you just read.
Yeah,
I don't remember. Okay, so yeah, if anybody's watching this, if you took the master clan test, the letter should show you your haplogroup. You can plug that into Wikipedia and it'll give you more information about where your lineage came from. Okay. Same as I did here. It's the same thing. Same thing that I did for the Patrick clan test takers. You can do that for master clan with the haplogroup. It's just it'll be the mother's side, but it won't be E. It won't be an E branch. It'll be like an L branch if you're African ancestry. So so then we've already talked about the deep ancient past and the devastating transatlantic journey that but there's other movements that shape where many of our families are today, which is like the Great Migration in the US. Between 1916 and 1970, roughly 6 million African Americans moved from the rural South to urban industrial centers in the North and the West. And this was a response to the harsh, Jim Crow laws, oppression, and, promises of better opportunities. And so a lot of African Americans moved to like better jobs. Like they moved to destinations like Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, New York, Philly, LA, Portland, like these major, where you find us today, where you find a majority of, African Americans outside of the South, you will find in these major port cities because of the Great Migration.
And still, though, even with the Great Migration, right, and us populating some of these major cities that you outlined, the majority of Black people in America still reside in the South. Is that correct? Per your knowledge, per your research, yeah.
Exactly. My family came from Louisiana to San Francisco, and we still live in the Bay Area.
Okay.
So we have not, really moved too much further than from where they landed outside of Louisiana. And so that's what this map is showing you, that to this day, so what I'm trying to do is like they try to, I'm trying to show the flow never stopped. Like the story a lot of times starts as slavery. Like we ended up in these but we were in these sub states. And a lot of times the story starts there in our history books, but I've been showing you that it goes way, way further back than that, even further than the African ancestry test results even really demonstrate.
And so this map right here, the brown on this map, the southern states, that represents what exactly?
Yeah. Right. That's so
okay, so the key is just southern states. Okay. And the arrows represent
after the slave trade. So these are the southern states. It's the highest. This is the concentration of where the Black people of African Americans, where they were after the slave trade.
And before 1916, right? Before the Great Migration, we were primarily in these areas that are in the brown. Okay.
And so it wasn't until that period we started to really branch out.
So yeah, and I hate to keep going back here, but it just further, right? So just say for those who who take the position that Black people in America have always been in America and did not come via the transatlantic slave trade. If that were the case, it would seem as though we wouldn't be concentrated in the areas where the slave trade happened, right? We would be dispersed equally throughout this landmass. But I mean, I guess you could take the position that we're melanated, so we were in where the warmer climates were. But it still seems that, I mean, this seems like very compelling evidence that to the narrative that we've always understood to be our story, right? We were brought here and we ended up in these regions, and then from there we branched out throughout the country.
And we have the receipts with the DNA test, right? Our DNA haplogroup wouldn't match the haplogroups in Africa today.
Of course, yeah.
We didn't come from there.
Right. Yeah. 100.
So I love it when we have the receipt, when we're able to show the receipts. And so this really completes the journey so far of these lineages from their possible ancient origins in East Africa through the Nile Valley to West Africa, across the Atlantic to the American South, and finally dispersed across the US through the Great Migration. So this is more of a complete story than what we've been told. And so what I developed in my research is a way to connect these 3 points, which is our possible ancient African or ancient genetic origins. So that's where the little star on the map on the right is. That's the first point. And then to our African tribal connections, which is the dots. There's a purple path, a green path, a red path, and those dots are where we migrated to. And then the house, and then the ships that stole us away, and then those same dots are connected to where we disembarked from the slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade in the Americas. So I was trying. So this map I had created to show more of a pathway of how we got from point A to point C. But it's way more complicated than it's more complicated than that, because the timeline, the timeline of things is a whole nother layer.
Right.
The languages is another layer. The tribes are another layer. There's so many layers. I really simplified it just so for my own brain.
Yeah, for the audience. So yeah, like the timeline, right? So this began right in the 14th, 15th centuries, right? And so and continued on until almost the 20th century. So so you're looking at a period of a good 400 to 500 years, half a millennium, or where this this trade and these migrations, forced migrations occur, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Some voluntary, some involuntary, some
Right.
forced by. There's a lot of history here. But yeah, so I simplified it in that map. And so I'm kind of winding down at this point, the presentation. So if this research is correct and the evidence is strong that it is correct, it means we may be descendants of ancient East African nations who migrated across the Green Sahara Africa for thousands of years before eventually settling into specific tribes. But even deeper than that, we're talking about lineages that connect us to the African civilizations, during the Great Pyramids, during biblical times. If you believe that the historical events, the same genetic signatures that is present, Kush, the same genetic signatures that is present in the African American men that took those tests was present in Egyptian royalty 3,000 years ago. And it was probably the same bloodlines that built, like I said, the first kingdoms, developed mathematics, medicine, architecture, long before that. So we are still in our DNA. We carry this ancient heritage, and it's encoded in our DNA. So I guess my whole point of this is like, where we are like, I love this tree because we are many branches of greatness, and I just want us to remember that point of this whole exercise was to remember who we are, that we have these deep roots. And so the scripture says that we are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, and a peculiar people. And so when I look at the genetic evidence, I see the scientific proof. See the proof of that royal priesthood, that we're the chosen generation. The research suggests we carry ancient lineages with deep African roots. We are the carriers of heritage and millennia. We are still today the living continuation of those ancestral journeys that began where human civilizations merged in Africa. Like that's who we are. So no wonder we're awakening now. Like we're starting to wake up, and no wonder we're seeking the truth. And we carry that genetic memory that goes back to the very beginning. That's my spiritual connection.
Yeah, no, wonderful. Because I was going to ask you about that, because I know you said you're attending a Hebrew academy. So I was just that was going to be like my segue into how is this research validated or kind of confirmed what you're studying that may be separate and apart, not directly connected to this research. Because is your Hebrew or education, is it is it from the Hebrew Bible, or is that a part of it at all?
Yeah, it is the Hebrew, but which is still, King.
Yeah.
The Torah is the first few chapters,
Yeah.
first five chapters, but
the Old Testament.
Right, I was drawn to that program because of it's founded by Hebrew Israelites, and what they teach is that E1B1A is the marker of the people who are the the chosen people and of the descendants of the Hebrew Israelite. But I was like, well, that's great, but how do we know?
How do we know? Right. And so, yeah, when you put that scripture up, I thought of, I think it's Genesis 13:15, where, it says, God said to Abraham, know for a surety, that, or Moses, was it Moses? I believe it was Moses. Not Abraham, right? Know for a surety that your seed will be, find themselves in a strange land, and they will serve the people there for 400 years, but afterwards, they will emerge with great substance. So,
yeah, I mean, yeah, and then just personally, because I'm pretty much done with the presentation. I mean, when I was doing my research, especially during COVID, Ronald Dalton, it was Wake Up Black America, Ronald Dalton Jr. And that had me thinking about a lot of things during COVID because we had all that time. And so I can stop sharing now because it's the end. But I was reading scripture at the time because I was still calling myself a Christian. I was still in Christianity at the time, reading scripture, and it felt like I was reading it for the first time, and I was understanding it for the first time.
Right.
About and I was like, you know what? They're talking about us. Like I was like, this. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, this story is Africa. Whether we believe that the events actually happened or not, like this is still African storytelling, and I know this, and that's what I'm going to look for the receipts. Like, could we trace our DNA back to those times or back to that area of the Nile Valley, where because most of the Bible happens in Africa.
Right, in the Levant, right? Yeah, in that specific region, yeah.
Right. And so it just made more sense. And all these things connect together, which is why they that much now. That's why if they could convince us that we're not worthy, and that we were, a lot of times they misrepresent Ham. They say that Ham, is that he cursed
right, the Hamitic curse, right? Yeah,
but which is not true. There's just a misinformation out there, and I unlearn, and I'm still unlearning. I'm still on this journey of unlearning and learning more about who we are and why we are so special.
Yeah, because if you look at or listen to many of our spiritual traditions that emerged, in the earliest part of the 20th century, that began to diverge away from Christianity, right? Like the Moorish Science Temple of America, Nation of Islam, some of the Hebrew movements. They all speak to this, right? To us having an origin that started in the East, right? Took us throughout the continent of Africa, and we eventually made our way over to North America. So what your research does is kind of it validates and confirms some of those traditions that many of us kind of dismissed as, oh, that's just folklore, or just wives' tale, or it's allegorical, or what have you, just representative of a journey, which could be, you know, a spiritual journeys, you know, but you know, it could also, and what this research seems to point to is that is historical. There's a lot of historical fact and truth in those stories, right? And it's not, and it's beyond just allegory or metaphysical. There's actually truth there. So
I agree. Yeah, so I mean, it's been, yeah, it's fun to do and just keep learning and sharing in communities like this. I would love to see what people say in the chat about this and what they believe, and you know, we'll just keep going and working on it together. It's a work in progress.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get out of here, what I like to do is kind of understand, and you touched on this throughout the presentation, but understand like your African ancestry journey. So you kind of told us, but what I like to know is just what upon learning that information, right? What was kind of your most immediate you know, response, reactions, thoughts, and feelings, and how has that impacted you today?
Oh my goodness! So thank you for asking this question. Because I would have been upset if I left this part out. I went to Kemet. Soon as I found out, yeah, I got a plane ticket for me, my husband.
So as soon as you found out that you,
as soon as I found out.
Okay, because you did a number of tests, which result led you to you know, want to go to travel to Kemet?
The African ancestry.
Okay, so which one, like your paternal or your father did?
I took the maternal African ancestry, and it said, you know, you wouldn't think I would go to Kemet. I would go to, you know, Egypt, what they call modern day Egypt, after getting my test results that said Mandinka from Senegal. But I wanted to start at the beginning.
Okay. So you didn't want to go to Senegal immediately. You wanted to.
No, I wanted to start the journey all the way from the beginning. So this was in 2022. In 2022, wow. We all went on a Black History tour, you know, like through Maximum Impact Travel and what's their company? Urban Intellectuals. They did a tour. And so we joined with 40 African American from the diaspora, 40 African Americans all joined on the tour with us. And we arrived in, you know, Kemet in 2022. And we went on a tour. We went on a cruise on the Nile. And that I realized that it flowed from south to north.
Yeah, it flows from south to north. Yeah.
Yep. And we went in the pyramids, and we went to a Nubian village in Aswan, and they all were dark.
Dark. You know, yeah. I got pictures. I've been to Kemet too. I lived in Egypt for a year, but yeah, I mean, it was. I was former retired military, so I was stationed in the Sinai Peninsula. But I did get to travel all throughout the country, all throughout the region, actually. So not just Egypt, but Egypt, Jordan, Israel, all the neighboring Sudan, all those neighboring countries. But yeah, getting a chance to go to Aswan and seeing the Nubian people was and so I did this. I'm gonna let you share your story.
No, please.
But so I did this before I did my African ancestry test, right? And this was in 2011, 12, around there. And so when I would go to like lower Egypt or Sudan, people would, I'm dark now, but when the sun gets me, I'm like jet black, right? So a year in the sun, I look like the people in Sudan, right? So so everybody assumed I was Sudanese, right?
Wow.
Because I was darker than, you know, most of the people in Egypt, even the Nubians. So, but I was like, nah, I'm not. And I thought it was strange because just, you know, everything that I had understood about my lineages that I came from, you know, West Africa. And so when people were like, yeah, you Sudanese, you know, I would be like, no, that's why are they making that assumption? So,
That-
but learning, after learning that I'm Belanta and, part of our lineage comes from there, it made sense, later. Wow. It can be like,
yeah,
yeah,
that they migrated over. Yeah,
right.
and then seeing us on the pier, on the parts that weren't marked up, you could see the color still on
On the
the
people,
temple.
yeah,
The
yeah, yeah, yeah,
people. And I'm like, they
yeah.
were us. The
Yeah, they
color
was. It's
they had
clear as
lives,
day, right? It's without a
clear as
question
day.
that the people in the inside that are painted and drawn inside, that they're black
Hair,
people. Yeah,
the
yeah,
locks.
yeah,
I was
exactly. Our hair
like,
texture.
oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah.
So that changed everything. When I went to Kemet and I did that tour, that was it. And then from there, then the next trip was to Sierra Leone for the citizenship, because we had the results, and then they were saying you could get citizenship. So we did that. And then last year we went to Ghana.
To Ghana.
And yep, Ghana last year, and back to Sierra Leone. Then next year we're going to Sierra Leone again, because we're trying to work on our agricultural project with the farmers, the rural farmers.
So you got to get to Guinea-Bissau before it's all said and done.
True.
So put that
Yeah.
on your bucket list,
On
on
my
your
radar.
to-do list. You know what I'm saying? Because it's a beautiful place. It really is, right? I know it's been in the news lately, and some of the challenges that are real. But I mean, once you get a chance to go over there, you'll never forget that. It's a wonderful experience. So
okay, and I'm put that on my list for 2027.
Yeah, put that up for real. Yeah.
So that was my immediate response, was to go back to the continent and see for myself, and even things that I thought, what I thought it was going to be was nothing like what I thought it was going to be.
Okay. Yeah.
Nothing. I mean, and it felt so much like home. I mean, I feel like I'm at home.
Familiar, right? It's familiar.
It's very familiar.
Yeah. So you have a result that's also in Sierra Leone, or just your husband, or you as well?
So the first time we went, no, I do not have a result in Sierra Leone. But then my sons were able to get citizenship. I wasn't. But now Sierra Leone has opened it up so that if you can show African ancestry of 51% or more African ancestry, now you can get your citizenship without having a Sierra Leone match.
Wow.
So now I'm going back next year for my citizenship.
Okay. So is that in their constitution? They recently made that, or is it just how?
No, I think it's just through their they call it monuments and relics department. It's like a departmental thing. Things just like policy. And they're just like, come back and invest and stay and start businesses. So a lot of the people from that group have started businesses in Sierra Leone.
Yeah, I think out of all the countries who are offering or who have citizenship programs, I think Sierra Leone's has been the most successful. I know, like you said initially, they were just partnering directly with African ancestry, and it was a good partnership. But the idea of opening it up to I have kind of mixed feelings about that, because I think there is something to going back and becoming a citizen with the place that you have a direct connection with. So I think there's something to that. But the idea that all Black people in America who descend from Africa have the opportunity to go somewhere, I think is important.
Somewhere else, somewhere that's not here.
Somewhere that's not here, right? And I know Burkina Faso was working on an initiative similar to that, opening it up to everybody in the diaspora.
That would be great.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's definitely challenges. So I keep asking myself, well, why do I keep coming back to America? That's a whole nother topic. I was like, why do I keep coming back?
Right.
And it's just it's their convenience and a lot of different reasons. But people always ask me, can you see yourself living there? And I absolutely can see myself living there. It would take a different mindset. And so hopefully, I mean, it would take a different mindset to I think their way of life is in a lot of ways better than our way of life. It's more community focused.
It is. We just have to. We all were born into this, and we developed a certain mind, and so kind of ridding ourselves of it, which is just going to take a little bit of time, and maybe a generation or so. You know what I'm saying? So, I don't know how feasible or realistic it is for like a mass, remigration back to the continent for people that are probably like our age. But maybe in a generation or two, that would be, it'll be more reasonable, because I think the gap will close, right, between what we have over here and what's being done and developed.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so I think.
Which is why we take our sons. They love Africa. They're 10, and they're 9 and 11 now, and they when we going back. Yeah. Absolutely. The kids love, they get it.
Yeah, they get it, right, and they get it. So hopefully, hopefully we don't get distracted and derailed in this country. I know that there are really forces who are trying to, separate us from the continent because they want it for themselves, and instead of us being kind of a liaison or gateway, they want to cut us out completely. So. So we have to be mindful of that, and we have to fight back against those forces. And, make sure that anybody that wants any of Africa, they got to come through us to get to it. So,
right. I mean, one by 2050, 1 in 4 will be African.
Right. Africa is the only place that does not have a declining population, right? That has positive growth rates. Right. Every other country, every other continent, right, is the people aren't producing fast enough to keep the populations up. Yeah, they're dying out, right? So the markets will be all African. Everything that's going to be on this earth is going to be African, all right? So
how it should be.
Yep, absolutely. So no doubt. Yeah. So, hey, it's been a great conversation, and I won't keep you much longer, but I'll open up the floor to you if you have any closing comments or any last things you want to say before we get out of here.
Oh, I just appreciate this opportunity to share. You can still go to, let me see, www.dr.knox.phd. Sorry about that. .phd. So Dr. Knox, KNOX.phd, and you can still enter your Patrick Clan test results in order to be included in our anonymous map. So we can still map your lineage on the map anonymously, and then we'll send you and look up your haplogroup and send you the results. So that's available.
All right. Yeah. All right. LaWanda, well, this has been great. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you being with us this afternoon, and we look to have many more conversations in the future. And can good luck and congratulations on everything you've been doing. And look forward to calling you Dr. LaWanda.
Yeah. By the end of the year.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, by the end of next year. Yeah.
By the end of
Thank
next
you.
Year. Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.